When you think about Christianity, the word church is just central. It's how believers have always defined their community. But here's a wild fact. The Gospel of John, one of the most foundational books in the entire New Testament, never, ever uses that word. Not once. Now, that's not just a piece of trivia. It's a really deliberate choice, and it unlocks this whole different way of seeing God's people. So, we're going to dive into the beautiful and honestly surprising vision that John gives us instead.
So yeah, this is the big mystery we're tackling. The original Greek word for church, ekklesia, you see it all over the rest of the New Testament. So for John to leave it out of a book that's all about Jesus and his followers, well, that's a statement. It's not an accident. So the question is, if he's not using the word church, what is he showing us? What's he trying to get us to see?
Now, this missing word has sparked a ton of debate among scholars. One of the heaviest hitters of the 20th century, a theologian named Rudolf Bultmann, he looked at this and made a really bold claim. He basically said, look, John just wasn't interested in the organized church. He argued the gospel was all about your own individual faith, not about community. And for a long, long time, that was pretty much the standard view.
But is that the whole story? I don't think so. There's way more to it. So here's our game plan for digging in. First, we'll look at the missing word itself. Then we'll see how John actually defines this community as worshipers and as a people saved by God. After that, we'll get into some of the most famous metaphors in the Bible: sheep, vine, and shepherd. Then we'll explore their purpose, as servants on a mission. And finally, we'll pull it all together and see how these pieces create this absolutely stunning portrait of the church.
All right, let's get into it. The gospel's missing word. I mean, if Bultmann was right and John just didn't care about the church, this would be a pretty short explainer, right? But what if he missed something? What if John's vision of community was just so big, so alive, that one little word like ekklesia couldn't possibly hold it all?
And that's exactly what other scholars like D.A. Carson have been saying for years. Carson's point is, hey, look closer. The word church might be missing, sure, but the reality of the church, it's everywhere in this gospel. He argues that all the key ingredients, where it comes from, what its mission is, its very nature, are, as he puts it, richly present. And that right there, that's the key to the whole thing. John doesn't give us a definition for the church from a dictionary. He paints us a portrait. He uses this series of vivid, unforgettable images to show us who God's people are, what they're like, and what they're supposed to be doing. He shows us. He doesn't just tell us.
In fact, the theologian Robert Peterson, who's really our guide for this whole explainer, he argues that John gives us 7 of these pictures, 7 distinct images of this community. And when you put them all together, they create this absolutely breathtaking vision of what it means to be God's people.
So, here they are. This is the list. John shows us God's people as true worshipers, as a people saved by God, as sheep who know their shepherd's voice, as followers walking in Jesus' footsteps, as branches that are literally getting their life from the vine, as the people Jesus himself prays for, and finally, as a community sent out into the world on a mission. Let's start by digging into those first 2.
So, at their very core, who are these people? John starts by defining the community not by what they do or where they meet, but by who they are in relation to God. Their most basic, fundamental identity is this: they are worshipers and they are saved. This first picture is absolutely revolutionary. In John chapter 4, Jesus is talking to a Samaritan woman, and he tells her that a time is coming when it won't matter where you worship, not on some special mountain, not in some holy temple. God's people won't be defined by a building, but by how they worship, in spirit and in truth. This just blows the doors wide open, making the community of God something that goes way beyond any single location or ethnic group.
Okay, the second picture defines this community as a people saved by God. Now, if you know the New Testament, you've probably read the Apostle Paul's super systematic breakdown of salvation in the book of Romans. John is painting the exact same picture, just with a completely different artistic style. He uses his own unique language, and it's all centered on the beautiful relationship between the Father and the Son. And this slide just shows the parallels perfectly. Take a look at this chart, where Paul, in Romans, uses a big theological word like predestination. John, in his gospel, describes it in this really personal way: the Father giving people to the Son. Where Paul talks about God's call, John says the Father draws them. It's the same divine process, from beginning to end. It shows that this community's very existence is an act of God, from start to finish. Okay, let's shift gears and move to our next set of pictures. If those first 2 told us who this community is, these next ones are all about what it's like, its actual relationship with Jesus.
And to do this, John uses two of the most intimate and powerful metaphors in the entire Bible.
So in John chapter 10, Jesus makes this incredible declaration, I am the good shepherd. And to his listeners, that would have been a shocking thing to say. The Old Testament, especially in places like Ezekiel 34, is just full of condemnations of Israel's corrupt leaders. It calls them false shepherds who only care about themselves. Jesus is saying, I'm nothing like them. He doesn't just guide the sheep, he lays down his life for them. This metaphor is all about total dependence, intimate connection, I know my sheep and my sheep know me, and of course, ultimate sacrifice.
This next metaphor is just as powerful. You can see the contrast here. The Old Testament often pictured Israel as a vineyard that God planted. But, as you can see on the left, it ultimately failed to produce good fruit. It yielded worthless grapes. Then, in John chapter 15, Jesus comes along and says, I am the true vine. He's the real deal, the fulfillment of that old symbol. His followers are the branches, and their whole existence, their ability to do anything good, depends completely on being connected to Him. It's this picture of total union and life-giving connection.
Okay, so we've seen who these people are, and we've seen the nature of their relationship with Jesus. But what are they supposed to actually do? Well, this final set of pictures pulls back the curtain on the community's purpose and its mission in the world. In John 13, Jesus does something that was just unthinkable in that culture. He, their master and their teacher, gets down on his knees and starts washing his disciples' filthy, dusty feet, a job that was reserved for the lowest servant in the household. It's a stunning moment, and it has two layers of meaning. First, it's a powerful symbol of the ultimate spiritual cleansing he's about to accomplish on the cross. But it's also a direct command. I have given you an example, you should do as I have done for you. The whole purpose of this community is to serve one another with that same radical humility.
So what does Jesus actually want for his community? Well, in John 17, we get to listen in on his prayer for them, and it's incredibly revealing. He doesn't ask for them to be successful or comfortable. No, he prays for their protection from evil, for their radical unity, for them to be made holy by truth, and ultimately for them to be with him one day and see his glory. That's it. That's their ultimate purpose and destiny, according to Jesus himself.
And the final picture is their mission. It's their marching orders. After he's resurrected, Jesus appears to his disciples and says these incredible words, As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. Then he breathes on them, which is this powerful echo of God breathing life into Adam at creation, and he commissions them. Their purpose is to go out into the world, empowered by his Spirit, to carry on his mission of forgiveness and reconciliation. Okay, so let's step back for a second and look at the whole canvas. We started with a missing word, with this little mystery. And what we found were 7 rich, overlapping, beautiful images. So, when you put it all together, what does this finished portrait of the church actually look like?
Well, it turns out John's vision is incredibly complete. For centuries, Christians have used 4 words to describe the church, that it is one, holy, universal, and apostolic. And what's amazing is that John's pictures show us all 4. The community is one, united like the Father and Son. It is holy, set apart by truth. It is universal, a flock with sheep from many different folds. And it is apostolic, sent out with the apostles' message. So the great irony is this: the gospel that never uses the word church gives us one of the most profound and complete pictures of it in the entire Bible.
And all of that leaves us with one final question to chew on. John chose his pictures, shepherd, vine, servants, very, very carefully. And it makes you wonder, what pictures do we use for our communities today? Do we think of them like a business, a social club, a political party, or maybe a family? Because as John shows us so powerfully, the pictures we choose, the metaphors we use, they don't just describe our reality, they actually create it.